You've tuned in to another edition of The Break Room, a weekly conversation about how the City of St. Augustine works from those who do the work every day. Hosted by the City of St. Augustine's Communications Director, Melissa Whistle, The Break Room offers a closer look at the different city departments and provides updates on current and upcoming projects and events. And now your host, Melissa Whistle.
Welcome to The Break Room. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Melissa Whistle, Communications Director for the City of St. Augustine. In studio this week, I've invited the city's Chief Resilience Officer, Jessica Beach, to join me. She has recently presented an update to the City Commission on some capital improvement projects, in particular projects that address our flood mitigation throughout the city, things that include projects like the FEMA 13 lift stations in Lake Maria Sanchez. We've talked about these in the past. But what I would really love to talk about today, and I think our listeners are going to want to hear about this, is a critical aspect of how the city addresses flood mitigation concerns when it comes to our residents. We're talking about our homes, our neighborhoods, our resilience in our day-to-day lives. So Jessica, welcome back.
Thank you, Melissa, for having me back. Excited to be here.
We had a great presentation at the commission meeting recently. Like I said in our intro, you were talking about FEMA 13, Lake Maria Sanchez. That's great. But we hear a lot from our residents.
Yes, we do.
In particular, after storms, after flash flooding events, things that are not storms, things that are everyday occurrences. What do we hear from them, and where are we with really listening and actually answering that call?
It's hard to believe it's coming up on a year when we had the really citywide flooding, and it was not a named storm event. It wasn't a declared disaster. It wasn't a hurricane. It was simply a nor'easter that lasted for days. And then on top of that, we had rainfall-driven flooding coupled with a king tide event. So we had citywide flooding, and really the city, I think that was eye-opening because unlike a hurricane, when you're typically evacuated, our residents were living through the flooding. And so it was very real, and it affected all of the city. And so in response to that, the city started doing neighborhood outreach meetings to listen to our community, listen to our residents, have a better understanding of their concerns, and trying to put resources in the hands of our residents to make us more resilient in the long run, honestly. And so we focus a lot on our large engineering projects that we call capital improvements, but the missing link has been, what can residents do? And some have taken their own initiative where they've financed rebuilding their homes, elevating. There's a lot of different options out there. And so
that's expensive.
It's very expensive. And that was the number one thing that we were hearing from residents that maybe had not taken that step, because that is a huge financial commitment. And they really have to think through, these are long-term decisions that they're making with their property. And usually your home is your largest investment.
Right.
And so everyone's at different phases of life and what they're going to do. Do they want to stay? Do they want to sell? Do they want to move to higher ground? And so everyone's kind of wrestling with those questions. The largest request that we heard back from our residents was, how can we raise our homes, but we need assistance? Is there programs? Can the city help? And so myself and Buddy Sholland, our building official, and also he's our floodplain manager for the city, we started offering these one-on-one flood mitigation site visits where we could look at, are there things that they could do, kind of low-hanging fruit with maybe landscaping. Just doing some simple landscaping in their yard can maybe keep the drainage from the road running onto their property and causing issues. And those are some simple, more cost-effective things to do. Then you can get into more expensive stuff. Maybe if someone's not able to physically raise their home, but they have talked about, we have actually had a number of requests for putting in walls around the property. And they can be decorative walls, but they do serve a function and a purpose to keep water just from sheet flowing onto their property and things like that. So there's different levels of flood mitigation that they can do. And
every day.
Exactly.
And
those are the smaller scale things.
And you're right. I think a lot of what you and the city was hearing was, what are you, the city, going to do to help? And we can't so much answer that, but yet, like you said, the advice of those low-hanging fruit of doing that can be done. But we also have, there is government assistance. It's just not at the city level.
Exactly. And so we're trying to figure out a way to connect. So there's some things that people could invest their property, things that they can do. But then the ultimate end goal, I think, for a lot of our residents citywide, if you're in a low-lying area that's prone to flooding, which is most of the city, the best bet for the long-term investment and resilience of the community is to elevate your home. That's really the best option. It does a number of different things. It helps reduce that risk of that home, that structure. If you've been flooded, you've gone through the stress and the trauma, the costs of having to rebuild. So you can reduce those risks quite a bit. It is expensive. And so fortunately, through the federal government, through FEMA, they do have a flood mitigation assistance program that's designed to help mainly target those severe and those repetitive flood loss properties. You do have to have flood insurance through the National Flood Insurance Program to qualify. And the thought behind that is you're invested into this program. FEMA is going to help you reduce your risk and also reduce those costs, because if you don't and you've been flooded, your insurance premiums continue to go up until you do something. So
and the raising, I mean, ballpark, I will say I was recently looking at a property that was in the low-lying area and knew someone that did elevation and came out and he looked at that and he goes, well, that's probably going to be about $80,000. And that was just to lift it, not to reset everything. I mean, it was to lift and put the foundation, those pilings underneath it, but I would have still had to address, the yard and everything else around it. That's a lot of money.
It is
out of pocket.
And we've probably met with 30 to 40 different residents and hearing their experience and other neighbors. And there's about an average $100,000 ballpark number is what I kept hearing from residents. And you're right, it only costs the physical elevating, but then you have to think about your plumbing and your electrical and the landscaping. And if you have attachments like what do you do with your garage? What do you do with like a sunroom and things like that? So there's things to overcome with it. And so that flood mitigation assistance program, it's federally funded and the city has to be the applicant because it's basically what we're eligible for. So we were trying to figure out a way to handle the demand of what we were hearing from our residents through this FEMA process. And FEMA's, it's complicated and there's a lot of administrative things that go into that. And so that's what prompted us to look into going out and professionally soliciting companies that do this already and get them on board to work with the city and act as that liaison, that boots on the ground between the residents in the city to figure out who qualifies, how to get those applications pulled together and try to maximize and take advantage of that program.
Hold that thought. If you are just now tuning in, you are listening to The Break Room. I'm Melissa Whistle, Communications Director for the City of St. Augustine. And today in studio, we are talking with Jessica Beach, city's Chief Resilience Officer, and what the city is doing to help residents, addressing resiliency and flood mitigation. And of course, we're now getting into the really important part, funding, reimbursement. You're talking about going outside and getting a consultant. I do want to point out, we did have a couple of folks come to you and to Buddy, which is really where this kind of came from. Talk just a little bit about what that was. I mean, that's where you and Buddy both said, oh my gosh, there is a lot here.
Yes.
And you were successful, partially, right?
Yes, and so we knew about this flood mitigation assistance program, but we weren't really familiar with it. And so Buddy's probably the most intimately knowledgeable on it. And he had been trying actually in the past, since Hurricane Matthew, where we've had homes that have been repetitively flooded and damaged, trying to work with those individuals on that program, but it just hadn't gotten to a point where people wanted to make that commitment. And because there's a lot of paperwork and there's a cost and you have to cost share with FEMA on it. Right. So up to that point, we had two candidates that approached the city that we thought would be eligible. And so they said, yes, let's try this. And so Buddy worked directly with them to submit these applications for that grant program. And it's offered annually, which is good because now we know we can set up this program. And if you don't make it in this cycle, maybe next cycle, we were trying to get the framework in place for it. And we got a little bit of experience with it last year as to what's involved because it's time consuming.
And that's where you said, okay, we need help.
Yes, exactly. Because in knowing the FEMA language and how things work and what they're looking for on the applications and how do you best couple these projects together, there's a lot that's involved with it. And so going through that process, we realized we really need some specialty expertise in this area that can maybe help the city, help our residents to connect with the funding and ultimately help them reduce their risk and protect their very valuable asset, which is typically going to be their home.
Their home. And a lot of people don't want to leave.
That's the other resounding theme.
I flood. I can't stand it that I flood, but I do not want to leave.
Yes.
How do I stay here and save my house and stay in my home?
And the neighborhoods are, they're communities. They're these little smaller communities within our larger community. And the neighborhoods, people, they love their neighbors and their neighborhood, and they enjoy where they live, and they don't want to make that huge change when you're talking about potentially relocating. And so that was another resounding theme, was most people wanted to stay, but they wanted to figure out, how do I reduce my risk, and actually how do I make it livable? And so that was definitely been, I would say, that most common theme that we talked with. Yeah.
So we're not out of time yet, but before we leave today, let's get down to some of the important things of what we wanted to talk about. So we have made a commitment. We did put out a bid. We had 10 companies respond.
We did.
That's huge.
Which is a lot. That's a lot of proposals to go through. And I know, Melissa, you were on that team, that evaluation team with myself, Buddy. We had our grants administrator, Corey, on board. And so going through these, it was interesting.
Right.
And there was a lot of great candidates. And I think we boil it down to the top 3. And really those top 2, I think we could have done great with either one. But I feel like we've picked the best candidate that really does, this is what they do.
This is what they do.
And I think our residents will really benefit from it.
So Quality Engineering is our team that's coming in. And part of why this interview, why our conversation today is so important, is we are going to have workshops. We love our workshops.
Yes.
That we're bringing them in.
Big question when we were interviewing was on the outreach, and how do we reach our residents that we know that need this? How do we do that?
And the week of August 23rd, we're still in those fine-tuning of the dates and times, but we're going to have workshops available for those homeowners that have flooded, repetitive loss, severe repetitive loss.
Yes.
What can we look for?
And I think from what Quality's done in the past is they have a general information presentation to just talk about the program, what's involved, who can qualify, because there are some things you have to check off the list. Then once you get past the minimums requirements, then they start looking at the actual individual scenarios and setting up. I think they plan on doing individual one-on-one type consultations, talking with our residents, figuring out eligibility, and kind of coming up with the list of potential applicants that we could maybe get in with this grant cycle.
Now, to our listeners, if I've flooded once or twice, whether I had insurance or not, I should still come, participate, listen, come to these meetings, come to the workshop?
I would definitely recommend come to the workshop, learn more about the program, because even if you didn't have flood insurance, from what I'm understanding from Quality, there may be other ways to address that. And if it's not this cycle, they could put themselves in position for next year's cycle. And it's at a minimum a 75% cost share with FEMA, and then 25% on the applicant. But that's going to vary depending on how bad you flooded. So if you're more severely flood repetitive type properties, I think FEMA kicks in more and can cover more of those costs.
And you just mentioned it there for a quick second, and it's so true. If you haven't been insured in the past, you could still qualify. All the more reason to get yourself insured now. We're not quite yet. We haven't had a storm coming yet, but it takes 30 days to get that insurance to be enacted.
Exactly.
So you've got to get that insurance going. It takes 30 days, and then at least you're in for this year.
Exactly.
In terms of flooding.
And that was definitely something they wanted to emphasize, was the need of getting that flood insurance as early as possible if you don't have it already, because there is a lot of lead times and things like that it has to be in place for.
So FEMA, FMA, flood mitigation assistance, residents who've been in a flood zone, flooded in the past, stay tuned. Check out the website. We're going to have some information and details for those workshops next week. That's the week of August 23rd.
It's right around the corner.
And you'll be there.
Yes.
I'll be there. And we're really excited to have Quality coming on board.
Me too. I think it'll be a great opportunity for our residents to benefit from this. So
I'm hoping maybe when they're in town, we'll get them to come and talk to us.
That would be really great.
On the break room.
They really know their stuff and understanding the program. And I think it'll be great having them on board.
It's a lot you and Buddy in particular, like you said, worked through those paperwork, and that there really is something to be said for those professionals that really know the program, really know what's happening. So we encourage our listeners to mark the dates for the week of August 23rd. Check the calendar, check the website, citysnog.com. And if you've flooded once, twice, or you're afraid of it next time,
please come. And people could also, if they wanted to email stormwater@citysanog.com saying, I'm interested in the program,
Okay.
we can make sure they're on like a mailing list if there's residents that are specifically interested in that too.
Great. Well, Jessica, we've finished up our time here on the break room.
It went by fast.
It's always great to have you.
Thanks, Melissa.
Thanks for coming, and we'll catch up with you again soon. If you missed part of this broadcast and want to go back and listen from the beginning, or if you'd like to hear past interviews, you can find us on the web at citysainogradio.com. We want to keep you informed about what's happening in and around the city, and most importantly, we want you to hear it here from the people doing the work and making it happen every day. In order to stay connected, you need to be connected. Be sure to like us and follow us on our social media platforms. You'll find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at CitySanog. And be sure to check out our website, citysanog.com, for updates on the workshops the week of August 23rd for flood mitigation assistance. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.
You've been listening to The Break Room, a weekly program addressing projects and programs offered by the City of St. Augustine. Join us each week as the city's communications director, Melissa Whistle, has in-depth conversations with the people who make our town work to meet the needs of our community. The Break Room is produced by communications specialist for the City of St. Augustine, Cindy Walker, and engineer by Flagler College communication major, Anne Marie Gresham. See you at this time next week for another edition of The Break Room.